Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. I want to welcome back to the show Daniel Kremer, who is a filmmaker, film historian, biographer, professional film archivist, veteran home video audio commentator, and DVD slash Blu-ray extras producer. And today we are discussing this new box set that he has coming out with Imprint, which includes Blue and Fade In, which are both directed by Silvio Narizzano, as well as the terrific documentary written and directed by Daniel called Cruel, Usual, Necessary, The Passion of Silvio Narizzano. Daniel, welcome back. Great to have you again.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Off the top, I wanted to ask, do you remember the first Narizzano film you saw?
Um, well, no one's asked me that yet, and all this, no, all these interviews I've done for it. Um, to be honest, I don't really recall. I remember, Georgy Girl is the most indelible movie in for people in his filmography, but I think I might have seen Blue early
Hmm.
on the VHS I have just above me. This VHS. Which is no way to see the film because, of course, it is widescreen. Supposed to be seen in 2:3:5 aspect ratio. So I was missing a great deal. It was around the time that I was first interviewing the subject of our last interview, Sidney J. Fury, when we were doing our initial recording sessions for my work on the book on him. So Silvio came up because Silvio was in many ways a mentor to Sidney Fury, and you hear it in the film. Actually, my initial recordings with Sidney, as like I gave my first film to another director who was at the CBC, and Sidney says, "You know the name Silvio Narizzano to me." In
Right.
that, and it's like, oh, and at the time, I guess I was like, oh yes, Georgy girl, and I guess he was a name in my consciousness, but I never really looked that seriously into him as a kind of an auteur or a voice with any kind of authorship when it came to making films. And But at that time, though, I definitely knew his name. I knew that he was Canadian, quite sure, and I knew that he made Georgy Girl, and I knew that he made Blue. I had seen a VHS of another one of his films, the Sky is Falling, which would have been on tape as Bloodbath, the VHS retitle. And what I mentioned in the documentary is an unwatchable tape. It is so dark you can't make out what's going on most of the time. And I demonstrate that as like, I do the 2023 film scan and I put it up against the VHS and you can't see the VHS.
That's
It
horrible.
is it's invisible and it's dark and you can't make out what's going on. It's one of the worst VHS transfers that has ever been. So, but I mean, if you want to say that I saw the sky is falling, saw is a relative term. I saw it in that version, but it wasn't particularly memorable because, yeah, like I said, it's a terrible way to see that film. But it was really in 2023 when Vinegar Syndrome put out their Villages of the Damned set, in which the sky is falling was featured, and these were all Spanish kind of films, the horror or horror adjacent films about villages wherein evil works in some way and form or fashion. So it was really that I count that as truly the first time I saw the sky is falling, which I'd known up until then as Bloodbath, and I know that it's a very divisive film. That one in particular, more than any other Narizzano movie, is it's a litmus test in a sense. People either love that movie or they hate it. There's very little in between. And if I always tell people, if you look at the rating distribution of on Letterboxd, from people who rated it a half star through people who rated it, the highest rating, every rating is equal. My husband is a statistician, and he taught me that is uniform distribution, meaning that everyone has rated that each ranking is equal.
Mm,
That points to the fact that, and also Megalopolis achieved this as well recently. Across the board, there were equal ratings, so
mm,
everyone, an equal number of people who rated it half star, 1 star, 1.5, two, and whatnot. Also, that equal number of people rated it three, 3.5, four, and onward. So that normally indicates a very divisive film. So The Sky is Falling, aka Bloodbath, is certainly that. But I remember going to my friend David Del Val, who does many commentary tracks with me, and is also a gay man. And as we know, as the the documentary explores, Narizzano's films are very much gay texts or queer texts.
yeah.
And so David had also seen the new scan of The Sky is Falling around that time, and we were both agog, I guess is the right word. I was like, isn't that movie fascinating? And I said, it is really fascinating. Like you connected with it like I did. It's like, yes, isn't it? Wow. The fact that it's come out again and Carol Baker, I'm sure never even thought that the movie would ever be released in any fashion. And Hopper, I'm sure didn't even know that he did it. But it's this document, and it's just this incredible film, in the way that it's kind of a self-reckoning, a harrowing self-reckoning. And so that movie inspired me to do a marathon of Narizzano's films, rewatching Georgy Girl, looking at Blue again, this time on in a widescreen file that I was able to find online, proper 2:3:5 aspect ratio, seeing Loot again, seeing Redneck, and but it was really by the time I got to his final film, Young Shoulders, that really knocked me back. And there are a number of incredible scenes in that film, and a number of incredible, mostly editorial, touches, flourishes, use of color in that film, um, the way that the club scene in that film. And it was after that where my jaw, figuratively, of course, and almost literally was on the floor, because I was really and I at the end of Young Shoulders, I was like, I need to do something on this guy. I don't know what that's going to look like. I could probably never sell a book on Narizzano. I probably could never, maybe I could do a monograph of some kind, or a short study or essay. I could do a video piece. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what form it's going to come in, or media, but I have to do something on him.
Mm,
And that's where it began, really. And by the time I have a wonderful relationship with Imprint Films out of Australia. They put out the Sidney Fury box set a
yeah.
couple years ago, and that was my baby. And if they score a new contract or deal or agreement with one of the major studios, Josh Hibbard there will normally ask me like, "Hey, mate, what do you want to see? What do you want us to license? Are there any titles in particular that you're passionate about?" And at the time, I was like, "I'd like to, if you could get Blue and the movie shot on the back of Blue fade in from your new Paramount deal, I could do something in a for that package in a big way." And it took some time, and I didn't wait for the green light, because what happened was my husband, who's, as I mentioned, is a mathematician and the statistician in particular. That's his area of expertise, public data and public numbers and all that stuff. And it was election year for us in America last year, so he was off on the campaign trail and getting the numbers, and you know, uh, you know, doing turnout models and everything else for the election. So he was off. He left me alone in Pasadena, all by my lonesome. And rather than drown my sorrows or curl up under blankets for lack of my life partner, uh, I was like, well, I can get a jump on this Narizzano thing. And then whenever Imprint comes around and they put Blue and fade in on the calendar, I can just have it ready. And so I was like, okay, I'll do a much more ambitious type of thing. And it was also around that time that I saw Made in England, the films, Life and Films of Powell and Pressburger,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is a wonderful documentary that's just out this past year. And that basically that film is Marty Scorsese going through the life and career and the films of Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, who are my number one cinema gods. I think they're the best that the film form has ever known.
Mm,
No one has made better films. My all-time favorite movie is The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp.
yeah.
If I gun to my head, if I have to name one movie, that's the one that I name. But watching that documentary about them made in England, where Scorsese takes you through their life, but also each individual film, and he clues you into what the films mean to him intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. It's like, oh, I'd like to do something in that format. It would be nice to do something in that format where I'm doing something personal, where I'm talking to the audience as a kind of an essayist, which I had done the year before with my previous essay film. It's a Zabriskie, 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 Zabriskie Point, which is available on Joe Dante's Trailers from Hell site. I was like, I can do something like that and something essayistic, taking people through the filmography of Narizzano. Then I thought for a moment, like, well, I have in the text, my script text that I recite, I was like, I have David Del Val. I have a portion where, well, David Del Val, film historian, says this, that, and the other thing. It's like, well, why not just go down? David's just a quick ride down to Hollywood. I could just interview him on camera.
Yeah.
And so I did that and have him speak for himself. And then I was like, well, if I have one person, I could have others and I could enhance my essayistic thing and I can compound the points with other perspectives, other interviews. And that's basically the approach that I took. And so you have this big 2.25 hour documentary, which is part essay, but it also meshes the line also with with more traditional documentary form with formal sit down interviews.
Yeah.
And then if you juxtapose that with kind of a almost a diary-esque approach to the narrator's relationship with the films and with the story of Silvio Narizzano, I might have something that is a little more unique in terms of the nonfiction film form,
Mm,
uh, where you either do one or the other. You do the essayistic, diary-esque type of nonfiction work, uh, to whatever degree of being avant-garde, or in the experimental film world, you have more essayistic films. You could have that branch, but you could also do something a little more uh, traditional and more conventional, and you can have those two things mesh,
right.
and then go back to back and have what the interviewees are saying kind of reinforce what you say for yourself. And I found that to be, after when I was editing, I found that to be a pretty powerful way to communicate all the points. So that's the route that I took, and I'm very proud of the result. And that I think it is, to whatever degree it tests certain boundaries as well as doing what I wanted it to do originally, which is tell of not only the films, the give an account of the films and the voice of Narizzano, but also an interesting life because he um, he said farewell to his life partner Win Wells early on, and Win died before his time of a cancer diagnosis. But and then he and Silvio kind of delved into a monastic life and gave up filmmaking and went into monasteries and Buddhist retreats and whatnot, and basically chucked the film world behind almost completely. And I was like, okay, I could tell that, and in addition to how that, how all the religious stuff informs all the films he made, how the voice of a gay man who you see a progression from Die Die My Darling, which to me and the gay men who are interviewed in the movies is as a portrait of a closeted man to a certain degree, even though it's about the two women, the shadow or the ghost of the dead son, who is very clearly coded as gay and closeted is manifest throughout. It's a shadow that's cast over the film, like a Sebastian Venable in Suddenly Last Summer. And then you go into Georgy Girl, which is a further manifestation of trying to achieve your true self, trying to realize your true self, um, knowing that you're nestled between, in Georgie's case, nestled between more, um, the more her parents and the elders in her life and the kind of the mod swinging London scene of her roommates, not fully knowing who she is. And even at the end, there's a certain ambivalence about that. And then by the time we're into Blue, Blue is basically a coming out. Um, Blue is kind of it's a nihilistic and fatalistic coming out, but that film is a coming out film by a gay filmmaker set and it's a Western that frames all of this. So I found many biographical remnants in the work of Narizzano, and that really guided the whole way forward.
Well, like I said before we recorded, I mean, I didn't know anything about Narazzano other than that he was Canadian and he did Georgy Girl, which I've seen and I really really like. And when I was watching the documentaries, when I was watching the documentary, the images in so many of the movies are so captivating. Like the sky is falling, like with Carol Baker drowned in the pool with the phone. I thought, oh my God, I have to see this. I mean, they're really, really, really striking. And so I certainly want to go through his filmography. But luckily, before meeting today, I got to see Fade In and Blue. And I really like both of them. And then I was asking myself, what is it about Narazzano or someone like Fury where they haven't been discussed much by scholars and film critics. Why is it that they've slipped through the cracks, so to speak? I mean, they're obviously successful filmmakers, but in terms of like, why are there not 10 books on these people like there is on or more on so many filmmakers? And I couldn't help I was wondering what you thought, and I couldn't help but speculate is, because they showed sides of men that are more feminine, or particularly like whether it's coded as gay or obviously gay, and in some cases, I wonder if in the past people, critics were just not, as comfortable with that, as a male dominated profession mostly. Luckily now things have changed, but again, we can only speculate. But did you ever think that it had anything to do with that?
Yes, I'm as far as classical foundational critics go, I'm a Saracite more than any other critic. I am a hardened auteurist in
Right.
that I believe that the majority of directors, at least if they're directors, as I say, worth talking about, have a way of seeing that, and sometimes, and I feel like even Saris, a lot of I mean, his book is always by my side. I consult this constantly.
There it
You
is.
know, I mean, Saris is brought the Politique des Auteurs to America, and we can be forever grateful for that. But I think a lot of his pronouncements have become a little fossilized in a sense that they were good for 1968 when this book was published. But I think they're kind of frozen in a time when I think there was a kind of condescension towards male directors gearing their material towards a more feminine purview or outlook.
Right.
And they tended a lot of these guys tended toward if you read the Pantheon in Sarris's book here, a lot of these guys are pretty uber masculine. You do have Hawks in there. Hawks is a little more progressive with his portrayal of women overall. He's much better than Ford, I'll say that much. I tend to take issue with the way that Ford's women come off, and I learned only recently, really, that David Thompson, film scholar, film critic of great repute, takes a great issues with John Ford and is not a fan by any means. Takes the same issues that I do with John Ford and how masculinity comes off in those films and the kind of the I don't want to say that, the fetishizing of mothers, but this very Irish Catholic thing that I don't connect with at all.
Right.
Honestly, it's a way of looking at the world that I don't have any kinship with personally. And of course, there are people in the film world who will shame you for feeling this certain way about Ford. They're like, how can you write Ford off like that? Or, oh, your top 100 list doesn't include any Ford films. It's like, I just don't connect with him all that much. I think I can recognize the craft as being pretty impeccable, but I write about recently what if filmmakers were spiritual leaders. And you have fun with that because I say, like John Borman says, filmmaking is translating money into light. I come from a Jewish, you know, point of view, so I'm saying, well, filmmaking is really translating what it says Gashmias into Ruchnius, translating the physical world into the spiritual. Now, what does that look like? It's in the grand scheme of things, in the nitty gritty, it's translating the cold ass substance of cellulose acetate, or nowadays ones and zeros on a hard drive, and translating that into something that is, interpretive of dreams and dreams states, personal philosophies, and you can look at filmmakers as clergy people in a certain sense. And what churches does one attend?
Mm.
And I'm writing about this. I'm doing a volume now that I hope to publish through Paul Cronin's press, which is basically a collection of my writings on overlooked filmmakers. And Paul is very receptive, and he's been great and very encouraging. But just collecting my writings on directors who are lesser known. And what does John Ford look like? And building that out as it's like, he's the most ritually oriented Catholic priest you ever did meet. But his true self comes out at the church socials where the women leave early and the men sit around in their uniforms and they sip tear infused beer, rhapsodizing their mothers. Now that's a scene. It's not mine, but it's many people's, and we can recognize the place in history. But my thing is like seek out the people with whom you have affinity. It's Tim Lucas's idea as well, which I really have latched onto, is your personal playlist of films and filmmakers should be like a mixtape that are exchangeable with others.
Right.
You're telling that person by this mixtape, this is who I am.
Mm.
This is who and what I get on with. This is a glimpse into my personal, um, you know, my personal conception and you're giving them a glimpse into yourself. And I think there's something very intimate about that, and beyond any kind of objective or objectivized sense of what is good and bad film. I think, I mean, Fury is as immediate to me as Ford is to others. He's that close to me. He's that proximal, I guess, in that sense. And as is Narizzano, because Narizzano, in having a conversation recently with David Thompson, because whom I've known for a number of years through Tom Luddy, who's since passed on, I sent David my film, and he's like, I had a hard time entering the arguments because I never got on with Narizzano's films because I find them, in his words, crude and over the top.
Mm.
And I was like, David, how do you feel about drag performance? Have you attended drag, and have you enjoyed it? Because Silvio Narizzano's movies are dependent on that.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So Narizzano is that whether these are very much, even though they're not about drag and they don't have men dressing up as women or vice versa, or any of that gender play, they're about drag in a certain way, being performers who are very big, performers who are very who are playing to the cheap seats, and they're surrounded by normally modulated performers who are playing characters. In every Narizzano film, Alan Bates and Georgy Girl plays it for those cheap seats.
Yeah.
You have Loot is the entire movie, but Richard Attenborough in particular in that film, and Telly Savalas and Redneck, and and Oliver Reed in the class of Mr. McMichael. You have every movie there's a drag performer who's kind of injected into our midst, and what is this saying deep down? And I find that most of the people who were interviewed in my documentary are gay men, and they're going to respond in a certain way, and they find great meaning in Narizzano.
Mm,
Now, if you and now there are going to be other uh, people who are kind of they're marinated in another cultural sensibility who aren't going to get that.
right.
But the argument is like, does this filmmaker have a voice? Is he saying something consistent from film to film? And whether or not you connect with it is another thing. But like the argument is being made that this is a very personal filmmaker, and there has to be a certain kind of bona fides that we latch ourselves onto in order to claim them as someone that we would attend their church, we would attend their synagogue, from week to week or whatever. So that's something I believe in, something that I preach in this volume that I have coming up. That is basically a collection of writings, but with some new stuff as well. But that my philosophy about auteurism is generally like the filmmakers worth talking about have a way of seeing if they're worth talking about, there's something about them that connects their films. And
Right.
that gets to kind of a psychology level of like what's propelling them. But and finding what that is, and then like figuring out if this is a house of worship that you want to continue to attend, if this person transmits or translates life as they see it, and if it makes sense to you. So
Mm,
I think Asano does do that for me. I think Fury does that for me. The Archers do that for me. Joseph Losey does that for me. Luchino Visconti does that for me. My favorite filmmakers are a weird hodgepodge, but they each individually speak to me in some way that is individual to me. So, and I think that's where we should be aiming.
hmm. Well, no, it's a really interesting perspective, and I was fascinated by uh, both Blue and Faden for a number of reasons. Because you look at Blue, this like clearly he was very interested in crisis of identity. Like, who am I? This guy who's caught between being brought up by Mexicans, but then when he's on the American side, he feels very at home there. And then, I mean, they're ambiguous about his sexuality, but it's pretty obvious that he's gay or bisexual at the least, particularly without spoiling it too much, the way in which the film opens. And I was really, I mean, that's something you mentioned that you see in his films is this crisis of identity. And then you look at Fade In. I know he didn't direct Fade In, but he produced it. And I thought, wow, because like they spend so much time on that love story, and it's like really tender and it's really beautiful. And I kept thinking, okay, there's gonna be some conflict coming, and then it comes, and it comes quite late, but it worked really really well. And I thought, where else, and this will be a spoiler if anyone click off and come back if you haven't seen Faden, but I thought, wow, like she dumps Burt Reynolds, Barbara Loden, and again, this is like he's so wounded, and he doesn't like react like you might see in some films with like rage or strong. I mean, we do see him jealous or at a certain point in the film, but he just accepts it. And I thought, wow, like he doesn't fight for it. He just feels as though it's hopeless. And he doesn't do anything about it. Then again, I know the film was like it does feel like something's missing. I only read later in the documentary is that it was cut up and the director was furious about that. But it's still it's a strong film. I also didn't know that the story that was shot on the back end of of Blue. I had no idea that it was like a docu drama, and I thought, wow, and it was shot in 67 and it didn't come out till 73. I did think for a second, they look a little younger. I was like, what's this 70? Like, I was like, Reynolds, like he looked a little different by 73. But I mean, I was like, wow, this is the beauty of discovering these films. These filmmakers are lesser known because you put someone in there like Burt Reynolds, and you'll never see Burt Reynolds like that. And I haven't seen all of his movies, but I mean, I can't remember see you sort of surround him so much with like the macho kind of play guy movies he played. But man, I mean, that's such a tender performance.
There are a couple of Burt movies, like Starting Over is one by Alan
Starting
Pakula,
over, yeah, that's true.
where the two women are basically they're really the ones in control there, I think, until
Yeah.
Burt steps up to the plate at the end of that film. And Best Friends as well, the Norman Jewison film. You have
Hmm.
him at the
I haven't seen that yet.
the him versus Goldie Hawn in a very kind of romantic comedy setting, and he's not always the powerful one or the assertive one. But getting back to Nerazzano though, and then we get up to a film like Redneck, which is a kind of a demented movie in every way, but really getting down to the crux of how the I guess like developmental science to a certain degree here, how one realizes oneself, I guess.
Right.
You kind of branch that out, or you kind of plot that out from, or build that out from Blue. Redneck is a boy trying to figure out who he is, coming from a background of privilege as a diplomat's son, but coming into the company of these gangsters, and you have Franco Nero modeling the masculine presence, and you have the Mark Lester character emulating that, and you have Nerazzano very clearly wrestling with a number of things that are about realizing one's true identity, how one realizes oneself, very heavily philosophical films. And then I mean, Redneck and The Sky is Falling, aka Bloodbath, are brutal, confrontational, self-reckoning movies. Um, and they're very people can they will very much look away from the freak show on display in those movies. But I mean, they're very essential if we're talking about personal cinema. And David Delval says something wonderful in the documentary, where he says like he begins from a place, and he tells a story sometimes that often is genre oriented, and then he finds things that interest him, and then he hangs those things that interest him on this original conception, this original genre concept. He does that in Blue, he does that in Redneck, he does that in any number of movies. And these things that mean something to him personally are manifest, and then they give voice to themselves in the body of the film. And then Redneck is a perfect example of that. It begins as like an Italian policier type film, or Italian crime film, and then it branches out and becomes this very strange creature of a motion picture, wherein we have this kid trying to survive amid basically figuring out where his loyalties lie once again,
Yeah.
and figuring out who he is,
Right.
uh, and who he's emulating, and who models masculinity for us, who models adulthood for us, and and there's that incredible scene of Mark Lester in front of the mirror, and basically mocking or mimicking what Franco Nero just did just a few moments prior, and basically like doing a bit of a monkey see, monkey do type thing, but who models that masculinity and that adulthood for us, and at this pivotal moment, you have this kind of entry into adulthood that's kind of polluted in a way. So, no, those films and others were very powerful to me when I was looking at Nerazzano seriously for this doc.
This theme of identity is certainly something that resonates with you, which you see in his movies. What you just described in Redneck is certainly things that you see in Blue. It really, really fascinated me as well. And I didn't realize that he didn't direct a Canadian film until actually much later in his career. And you talked about how he actually said, he didn't actually really care that much about Canadian cinema. And I wondered why that may be. The only thing I thought maybe because, the way, like with Fury had said, well, no one cared enough. And so I left the country. I thought maybe that was his experience. But is there anything to indicate why
No,
he
well, it's
didn't care?
I mean, all the Canadians of that era left
Yeah. Yeah.
the greener pastures. There was just no Canadian film industry in the late 50s when these guys were first coming up under the CBC. So
Right.
you had Jewison and Hiller embarked for mostly Hollywood, and Jewison in particular. But you had a number of Brit Brit Canucks, I guess, who embarked for England. Kotcheff,
Yeah.
Fury,
Yeah.
Lindsay Shantef was another one. Silvio Narizzano was another one. Eric Till had a little time in England, but many of them, most of them, I dare say, went to England, and they found their fortunes there. And of course, in Silvio's case, he found his fortune in Granada Television, as it was just coming up. They were a new outfit at the time when he was tapped to do their to had be a leading director in the drama department there. But Granada under Cindy Bernstein in its infancy. So I mean, he really made his name there, and he was like the first to kind of scout out the wilderness there. He was basically the first Canadian to arrive in England
Right.
and kind of planted the flag for the other Canadians that would follow in his wake, including Kotcheff, who recently passed away and was a friend, and Sidney Fury, who came. He was the one to come with two films, two independent features under his belt, made in Canada
Yes.
that
Yeah.
he couldn't show in Canada. But he arrived with two films. Narizzano had done a great deal of drama at Canadian television, and Sean Teff had done a western in Canada, and then he wound up doing very sometimes schlocky, you might even say knowingly schlocky genre type films moving forward. Everything from I was just watching just earlier, coincidentally, Devil Doll and the new Blu-ray. But he also did spy films and kind of pulpy films. But Shantef also found his fortune in England. Narizzano was the last to kind of make the transition to theatrical filmmaking with Die Die My Darling, or Fanatic as it's known in England. But Kotcheff and Fury got their wings making British films in the early 1960s. Fury, in particular, I want to say, because Fury was not pretty unstoppable force from the time he arrived there, making these horror quickies and whatnot. But Silvio kind of bided his time in TV and kind of highfalutin TV drama, where he was directing The Class Menagerie and No Exit and all these kind of
Yes.
very highbrow things. And then he makes his debut with the Hammer film. So a lot of the Canadians of that era, and then meanwhile back on the ranch, you had Don Owen and David Sector and other Canadian filmmakers who were beginning to build the fortress that would become Canadian cinema, with movies like Nobody Waved Goodbye and Winter Kept Us Warm and Going Down the Road, not to mention, which
Yeah.
is a little later. But they were important films, but they came in the wake of the initial
Right.
crop,
Right.
which were these guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much what I figured. And it was interesting to hear you discuss earlier the how the Scorsese, the documentary on Powell and Pressburger was I haven't seen it yet, but you talked about it being such an influence. And it's funny because I when I watched the documentary, and as you know, I read your Fury book, which I'll leave the link in the description box if anyone wants to watch our my interview
You're
with
the one.
sorry.
You're the one.
Yeah, yeah, that's me.
Uh,
I'll leave that in the description box if people want to see the interview I did with Daniel on his excellent biography. But I actually it resembled the biography for me because you talked about so many of his movies in great detail, and then as also going talking about your own personal feelings, and of course mix it's obviously also a biography, and it's so the documentary was that intention, or whether maybe I'm totally off, but was that something that you also had in mind to sort of resemble the structure of the book and the documentary sort of finding one another in a sense?
I've said this recently that Cruel, Usual, Necessary, The Passion of Silvio Narizzano is almost a book in film form.
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
that was a better
Yeah.
way that I put it. Yes, that's exactly what I meant.
Yes, it is a book and film forum. Like I said, I never probably would have gotten a publishing contract to do a book on Narizzano because truly nobody knows him. I mean, even when
Right.
I was approaching people to interview, my the one story that I've told a number of times now still gives me a chuckle because there's a wonderful man who was interviewed in the documentary who has a blog called Dreams Are What La Cinema Is For, and that is a wonderful blogger by the name of Ken Anderson, and I saw that he had written about Silvio's movies, and a couple of them, not many. He'd only seen, I think, three or four, maybe three, but he made a number of really, I considered on point and important observations that I wanted to have as part of the film. And I said, if you're in LA, could I interview you? Could I get you on camera and have you talking about? And then he emailed back, is like, oh, you don't really want me. I'm not an expert on Silvio Narizzano or any of these
Are no
things.
experts.
And I frantically emailed back and pleaded with him. There are no experts. You're the guy. You're the man of the hour. Come on, man. You've got things to say. Go on camera for me, and you could say them. And you're great. You're very observant. You're very smart. I just need that. And he acquiesced. But no, it's just funny. It's just like, oh, I'm not an expert on Narizzano. There are no experts on Narizzano.
Yeah, this is not Hitchcock. Like a
Yeah,
million.
yeah. So
Well,
that was funny though. But
yeah, well, yeah, because um, it certainly felt like what you just perfectly said, like a documentary almost that feels like reading a book, which you also for people who when they see it, you'll see the Daniel's fantastic voiceover, soothing voice, which I mentioned before recording, which I really enjoyed. What can people expect in the box set? I know the imprint has a link to pre-order it, but can you talk a little bit about what people can expect from the Narazzano box set?
sure. Well, I mean, there is Blue, which Narizzano considered his favorite of his own films. To his last day, he considered Blue ultimate his ultimate work, his best work.
Right.
So you're seeing him at I think the way that he would have wanted people to see or first experience him. So you have that in there. But in addition to that, you had the great Stanley Cortez, who shot the film, who also shot The Magnificent Ambersons, and he shot Night of the Hunter,
Right.
and David Del Valle was incredibly enough interviewed him in 1984, and at the ASC Clubhouse, and he recorded the interview. So the interview with Cortez is included on the Blue disc. So that's a really incredible hour-long interview, kind of career retrospective interview with one of the great uh, cinematographers of
Oh,
all time.
amazing.
And so that was a wonderful new addition uh, that happened only within the last few weeks um, when David realized he still had this. And we also there's a cast member who was in the leading actor in Elia Kazan's America, America, which is a Greek actor by the name of Stathis Gialalis, who I got to interview on the phone. There's a portion of that audio that's featured in the doc, but
Yeah.
that's on there as well. But you have an interview with Judd Bernard, the great producer of Point Blank and other films, who produced Blue and Fade In, who that's featured on the set as well. My commentaries on both films with David Del Valle and Nat Sigaloff, who's I know is a friend of your channel.
Yes.
Um, and I think there's one more interview on the Blue disc that has not been officially announced yet, so I'll leave that to Imprint to do that eventually. But on the Cruel Usual Necessary disc, I'm honored to be getting my own cover and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there are some deleted scenes from the doc on there. Just one, for instance, presenting. There's the Georgie's, performance at that stuffy party of "I'm a whole
Oh
lot of
yeah.
rum." Um, is read by the interviewees and me as a bit of a drag performance in a way, because It kind of comes out of
Yes.
nowhere. You didn't know that she had that in her in a certain way. So,
Oh,
but
that's a
it
good
comes
point.
out bold and brassy, and James Mason is lapping it up, and he's like, yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
But there's a sequence in there that, or there's a deleted scene that goes into that scene just alone as being a kind of a manifestation of a kind of drag performance where you're a little over the top, it's brassy, and what drag performance means, it's asserting yourself, it's going out loud and proud, um, and asserting yourself for who you are.
Yeah.
Um, and so there are, I think, six deleted sequences from the larger documentary. There are extended interviews with most of the people who were interviewed for the film. What else is there? There's a special appreciation of Silvio Narizzano by Peter Medak, who is another great director working in Britain at the same time. Medak is, of course, known for The Changeling and The Ruling Class and Day
Oh,
and the Death
right.
of Peleg and The Craze and
Wow.
Let Him Have It and a number of other great films. But Medak is on there paying tribute to Silvio. Thank you to Severin for that, by the way. That's another story. But yeah, there's a lot of extras on there, a lot of extras. And
Yeah.
for those who want to dig deeper, I've provided a number of things that give you the opportunity to get more to the bottom of things. So um, it's a big package.
Yeah, no, I mean they do such incredible work that of course you're such a big part of. I mean I've been fortunate enough to review a number of their Blu-rays and I'm always like in awe of like how first of all how beautiful the packaging is and how they really go above and beyond with the special features. So highly recommend getting it. And like I said, the documentary is fantastic. I love the two films. So it's a again, it's Daniel has we have Daniel to thank for once again reminding us of a great filmmaker that has been overlooked, Silvio Narizzano. So this will be out. Is it July 23rd? I'm just looking at the exact date. I think it's
Well,
July 20.
July 23rd is my birthday, but
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think that's the day.
Sometime in July.
I think it's July 30th.
July
Um,
30th. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. It
Uh,
says July on the website. I just, for some reason, don't see the exact date.
I do think that shipments go out before the proper street date, so people will probably get it before July 30th if they order.
Okay.
So yeah, that's normally the way it works.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, it'll be out then, and yeah, buy it. I mean, I did really push Imprint into doing this with the whole shebang. So as I say, my fingerprints are all over their backside. So pushed them really into it. So if it would mean a great deal if you really, and beyond that though, beyond pleading and getting down on my hands and knees, I think people who like to make big discoveries, or if they like to dig deeper than what the people in the films that are on the surface widely praised and all that stuff. If you want to go and find people like there are many films and filmmakers who are spotlit, but are you interested in a searchlight? As a question that you could ask yourself. Are you interested in learning about a guy that no one has known terribly much about until this doc? And there are still things I want to discover about Silvio, and it's not that the materials are readily available because, like I said, he's a very obscure guy to now. But I'm sure I'll continue digging things up. But I think if you want to make a big discovery in terms of a filmmaker who is intensely personal with every film that he ever made, um, and really put himself infused and imbued himself into every frame of the films he made, whether you like the films or not, whether you like the films themselves or not. Liking is almost ancillary to, like, there's a voice here, and personal filmmaking is something that I am very passionate about. Watching some personality, um, you know, emerge in films that most people haven't reckoned with on that level yet. I think is if you want to make um, that type of discovery, I think it's a good purchase.
Oh, absolutely. And I got the exact date. Yeah, you're right. July 30th, and it is available for pre-order now. So I will
Yeah.
leave the link in the description box for where you can pre-order it, as well as Daniel's social media handles if you want to follow him on social media. So Daniel, thanks again. This was a real pleasure to have you back, and I hope you can come back sometime soon to discuss the Zabriskie Point documentary, which, like I said, I really, really enjoyed. So thank you again for coming.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. I love everything you do. So very cool.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all so much for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. You can also leave a donation, or what I call a tip, by clicking the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on that and you can leave a donation if you choose to. Of course, I would greatly appreciate that. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movie logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos. I would also really appreciate if you leave a comment, share the video, like the video. All of these things create traction onto my YouTube channel and really help share the video far and wide and the channel in general. So thank you so much for doing that, and I will see you all in the next one.